in the last 50 years, we have created more wealth. Are we happier?
Dr. Connie Zheng, Associate Professor in Human Resource Management and Co-Director of the Centre for Workplace Excellence at the University of South Australia. With over 25 years of research in areas such as work-life balance, employee well-being, and workplace mental health, she discusses the hidden stigma in leadership, why wealth isn't making us happier, and the real reason employees are disengaged.
75% of Americans basically come to the office like a zombies. I'm present, but I'm not here. The only factors lead to better performance is goal setting.
You're saying high performance. You've got to think about sustainability, the long-term goals.
Successful onboarding, how long do you think will take?
12 months?
More?
18?
2 years. Within 3 months, they underperform. You tell me what's wrong.
Dr. Connie, welcome to the Martian Logic podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
You are very welcome. So, Dr. Connie, you are an associate professor in human resources management at the University of South Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us what is it that you do, what your exact title is, and what is it that you do? And then we're going to go straight from there into the things that you're passionate about and you'd love to do more research about. So let's start with what is it that you do at the University of South Australia?
Okay. As you mentioned, I am an associate professor in human resources management in USA Business, which is used to be called business school. And I'm also leading a Center for Workplace Excellence as the co-director at University of South Australia.
Okay.
This center is a multidisciplinary center, which is having members coming from a different disciplinary areas, such as human resources, also organizational psychology, and also coming from like health sciences or educational for future. So the group of the people come together forming this research center.
Okay.
So my role in University of Business is teaching and research in the areas of human resources, and particularly looking at performance management or leadership, and as well as a little bit of OB.
Performance management and leadership.
Yes.
And with the research, before we go into the details of it, which is I can't wait, just for people to understand the structure, a lot of people probably that weren't, they never did a degree or even did a degree, but they never did a PhD, or they don't understand how the research works, the research world in general. What's the linkage between business, if you like, the business community and the universities, especially in your case? Do you get some kind of funding from certain companies or other organizations that would love to have access to your research? Or what kind of, can you speak to that?
We do. I think from your last points, how do we get funding, especially industry engagement? We have done a lot of industry engagement work. We speak to companies, people. Even at this sort of forum, we try to let people know that we do research that is really important. We do research, try to provide an evidence-based solution to address industry or organizational needs. So what we do is that we have to conduct the research. If you talking about workplace excellence, you have to conduct a research in the workplace, going into organization, talking to organizational manager or CEOs like yourself, and also talking to employee to find out what are the best way that they look for to improve the organizational effectiveness or improve the employee well-being. So my areas of the research is on employee well-being and work-life balance. How do you do that? We conduct a literature review. We have trained to know how to use some analytical tool to collect the data. Data can be multiple forms. Data can be, your organizational, as you have an information system, you're probably already collecting tons of the data of your employees, whether they take leaves, how well their health, and what is their performance status, and etc., or training, progress. So we could use that data to do our research, to informing what is the connection between employees' leaves or performers with their well-being.
You also mentioned, thank you, that was going to be my next question, and you've
Yeah.
answered it without even me asking the question, how do you
Mm-hmm.
do it?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. A part of how you do it, do you, and you did mention you interview employees, so you might have sometimes for some research, you might need to, for you to think that you have enough data, for you to say this is a proof, I might need to talk to 1,000 people, or what, in terms of the sample size, for you to be satisfied that sample size is adequate for that particular topic, you might need certain size of, group of people.
Yeah.
So do you do that? And that's clearly costly to be able to speak with 1,000 people or 5,000 people, interview them and asking the same questions within the same environment to make sure you're not sort of, the data is, how do you describe that? Meaning,
Yeah.
it's sort of on an equal playing field.
Yeah.
For that data to be a good representation of the answers and the facts. Do you do that? And how costly is that kind of exercise when you do it?
That's interesting that your mindset is to do with the cost. Our mindset is about solving the problem. So we actually need to have a good research question to start with. Data collection is the next step. It's about solving problem. What is your problem first? So we're often doing research. It's very important to ask research questions. You cannot solve in the whole entire world problem, but everyone in here, you and I, can solving a little problem.
Sure.
And these little problem need to have a good questions. What is your problem? Is that to do with your practice, or is that to do with your employee demotivations? So you need to ask a question: how do I increase employee motivation? How do I improve the organizational effectiveness? In what way? So first, to start with the research question. If research questions being asked, it's actually informing you how going to solving the problem. Are you going to solving the problem by going to talking with the managers, or you're going to solving the problem to talking with the employee, or you solving the problem to talk to bigger communities, people. Sure. So that's how you decide how many sample is actually sufficient to collect the data. Indeed, collecting the data probably it's a most costly way for the researcher, because that's when you need to involve with a research assistant, or you spend time to talking to people. Yep. And then depending on sample size, if your research design is based on a qualitative versus quantitative, that's also different. The qualitative, you might just like come into the office to observe, or you might just access the archive data, or you go to interview people running focus group. Okay. If it is quantitative, then you might need to understand, what is the situation of the sample size. How about
we use examples, because we might lose some people if it's too much theory.
Yeah.
You're more than right to be able to talk about the theory. We do want to talk about the theory. I really appreciate it, but maybe we mix it with some examples, balance it with some examples. So before we go into what your passion is, maybe I want to talk about for at least an hour where your passion is right now, at this point in your life right now. What is that one problem that you would love to solve? If you have the money to spend, what would you spend it on? Before we go into that, just share with us a few facts, at least one, that part of your research that you've discovered that really fascinated you and that you're proud of. One of those research projects that led to the understanding of what are some of the things that your research sort of revealed?
Really, at the passionate things, it's about well-being. I'm still talking about well-being, and well-being actually influenced by the number of factors, and also dependence on different population cohorts. People like me, who is in, over 50 now, going through a very difficult time at the moment, is a menopause. So people started from 45 to 55 as a woman. At work, still very productive, but it's going through that period of your body changes, it's out of your control. Yes. So how do you deal with that? And what organization can help to support that.
Is that one of
To me, yeah.
Is this
no.
one of the projects
This is
you
the
worked
project
on,
that
or you would like to work on?
No, it's actually currently working on, and
Okay,
I'd like
okay,
to be
okay.
able to find out some funding sources to support this sort of project. And you're talking about funding sources previously, but we do ask a company to support, but we do also have the Australian Research Council, who might see this as a big project to work on.
So what are some of the facts that you can share with the audience and with myself that, you know, your research helped to shed some light on, to make it clearer? Not necessarily you've discovered the cure for cancer kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, we all hope that's 1 in a trillion kind of times that it can happen. But it's, you know, things that you're really proud that you're able to improve the understanding about.
I think just
in
stigma.
the last sort of 10, 20 years of your career.
Yeah, stigma.
Stigma,
yeah.
Pertaining to what?
Yeah, I think if we can reduce that stigma, even including myself, I have self-reflections on the issues. You know, you're not able to talk about it, you're not able to share your own struggling, and that stigma is self-stigma versus other people's stigma towards you, or your self-perceptions of other people's stigma.
Wow.
So I think if we can reduce that, then I think it's a big improvement for these cohort of population.
And I'm really intrigued. You said stigma without qualifying it. For example, if you said mental illness stigma, or if you said racism stigma, or if you said but you said just stigma. You must have meant it without qualifying it.
Yeah.
Is that really what you meant?
Because I think one
areas
areas of the stigma, it's actually reflection to the other areas of stigma that human minds has. And I think if we can change that stigma on anything.
Okay, share with the audience, when you say stigma, I used a couple of examples, mental illness, maybe racism, etc. Share with the audience, when you say stigma, some examples of a stigma.
Yeah, stigma towards women's attitude, women's leadership style, women's the way women manages people, or the way women's communications with others. All this is actually reflecting in our research. You know, the women talk about their own body,
Focusing
about their changes.
on women.
Yeah.
So far in your research.
So far
with the
in
stigma?
the research, because it has to be, because the menopause affecting these group of women particularly.
And that's the stigma aspect,
stigma.
or that niche of the stigma that you're focusing on.
Yes.
How people perceive women, especially in leadership, and how the women, you said something interesting I never thought about. What did you call that? Self-stigma?
Self-stigma.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit, please?
Yeah. So self-stigma is, you know, you're not comfortable. You still have that stigma towards your own body, towards your own feelings, towards your own emotion.
And do you notice it, the first time that you would notice the self-stigma, or you experience it, is it because you've seen it being done? You started to notice that people are treating you differently, or at which point the self-stigma starts to become a thing?
I think through my own research. So I myself very much research, because I started to be interesting in this area, because I'm experiencing and I don't know why. So when a colleague invited me into the project, I found yes, I need to look into this. So I often do the research because it's affecting myself first. And through that, you started to do reflection, because you read, you kind of respond.
Of course, but according to your research, from what you understand so far about stigma, even if we just focus on that niche of the stigma you're referring to, which is women and women at work and in leadership as well, or management, and how they're perceived by the people around them, employees, colleagues, etc., or even bosses. At which point that self-stigma, to me, it's enlightening, and I would like to understand a bit more about it. I understand the stigma from the point of view of how people are perceiving you, but you're saying self-stigma, how it becomes an issue for you. And I'm wondering from your research, at which point that person starts to feel or experience the self-stigma manifestation. Is it after a while when they start to realize something is not right here, people are treating me differently, the way these employees are treating me, or colleagues or whatever, is different to how they treat Steve, for example? Is that they start to observe certain things, and then they start to have that self conscious about it, and it becomes a problem for them. Can you speak to that?
I can only say that I started to be aware of it because I see these issues is important, and I wanted to kind of express that a bit more through certain channel. Through certain channel in terms of creating bigger awareness among even my own workplace.
Yep.
That's where I wanted to start to design kind of workshops or seminar. Then I started to feel fearful about myself. Can I run it? Do I need some more support? Do I need expertise? Because I'm not expertise in this area. It's only just started, right?
What's the percentage of, say, in Australia at this point in time? I know these figures are improving. What's the percentage of women in leadership compared to men at this point in time, roughly? 20%, 50%, 30%?
Oh, much less.
20?
Yeah, no. I think at the moment, if you're talking about like 200 Australian AXS, like top Australian company, the women's at the board level, you're talking about probably 7 to less than 15 or percent.
Less than 15%.
Yeah.
15%. Okay. And how about middle management? Is the figure better as opposed to CEO and boards? If we talk about middle management, is the figure any better? Is it around a 20-30 or around the same?
I think the middle managers probably better, but I don't think that it's actually still comparable with the men's leadership.
Okay, and in your opinion, from what you know so far, I know this research is still in progress, so you're still trying to find out a lot of facts. So, not necessarily you have the answer for it, but in your opinion so far, from what you know, the issue of stigma pertaining to women in there between age of 45 and 55, is that correct?
Yep. Yes.
Is it more of a problem for women that are in middle management, or the people that are really empowered, CEO, board member, it would affect them less as opposed to the middle managers who are really on the floor, working with people in the trenches, doing things, they need to be high energy, active, etc. Where do you feel it more of a problem?
I had to be honest because I'm only into this research since last year, and we conducted about 20 interviews. So there's a range of the experience among those 20 women that we have interviewed. One is that no problem at all, to the spectrums of have to go through surgery or, very, very heavily affected. Through those interviews that we have found that mainly the women's, because our context is mostly it's the higher education sectors, and you will find that most of them are in the middle managerial level.
Okay.
Very less it's in top tier.
Sure.
So I cannot comment on whether that's actually impact on top managers, but certainly impact on middle manager who are wanting to be leaders, but probably over those stigmas may actually withdraw from taking up the leadership role or hesitant to take up a leadership role.
And so do you really believe that stigma, is it really that self-stigma the more of a problem, or is it because really based on facts in terms of how really perceive and treat these women, they start to be treated differently by people around them? Or is it really just self-stigma?
I think probably a combination of it, yeah. So with research probably still unfolding because the area is pretty new. So
how about we talk about something that you've done a lot of research on? For example, you talked about
this is one area, is well-being, because you talk about my areas of focus is about well-being.
But it's a brand new project. You still don't have a lot of data, only 20 people, so maybe a bit too early to talk about.
It is, it is. But I called by you.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Called by you, and it's in my top of my mind.
That's amazing, and it's good for anybody who would love to contribute to this to get in touch with you, whether they want to be part of the survey.
I'd like to be able to part of their research as well, and build the collaborations,
or even
we're
help with some
hoping-
funding towards that project as well.
Yes,
This is
that would be
interesting.
good,
Yeah. But if we talk about something that you've already got a lot of data about, you've done tons of research, a year, 2, 3, pertaining to employee performance, employee well-being, any of these areas, a project that you spent a lot of time on that we can dig into a little bit and understand what you've learned from it. What would that be?
At the moment, I think
No, not at the moment. I'm talking about something you've done in the last 20 years.
last 20 years.
Therefore, you spent a lot of time on, and you've got the data from it that you can reflect and on that project and use that data to and share with us what you've learned from that research.
As earlier mentioned, I'm a me research, so I'm actually conducting a lot of areas of the research leading to affecting their well-being. I looking into the organizational kind of policy and practices gap, particularly that would influence on employees' well-being. So for the past few years, I think my focus actually shifted a little bit, because previously I'm more looking into examining culture, institutional factors that actually influence the design of the HR policy and practices more in China's context. Then I looking into like training policy and practices for multinational company in the Asia Pacific.
But I'm happy to talk about anything.
Yeah, so
anything that
I'm
you-
actually cut across a broader sort
That's
of
fine.
broader sort
Pick
of
a topic
research
that you
area.
spent some decent amount of research on.
So at the moment, I'm actually looking into I'm involved with the Futures of the Work project, which has been there for nearly 3 years.
Future of the Work project. What is that about?
This is about looking into the work and life spaces and looking at work-life balance conflicts or enrichments and how they're affecting employee autonomy, productivity and
How do
performance.
you feel that is going? Employers not happy. The US government, for example, thinks that half the employees don't even work. That is actually, I wouldn't laugh too much about that. I know someone, I'm ashamed to say I know that person, who for 2 or 3 days work in a different job. Different job.
Different jobs.
They don't even touch anything. They pretend they take the computer with them to the other job to pretend they're online about a few times a day. Just to say I'm still online. But doing a different job, earning to the tune of 40, 50K from the other job. And
So
while they're still on a pay, in America, while they're still getting paid. So, you know, I mean, this is happening.
Remote work there's a lot of discussions on remote works that we have investigating, and I can only tell you about what is a research funding. I cannot comment on any specific case like you are talking about.
I was making the point that
I understand
I'm
that.
just framing it, if I may. Just give me a minute. I'll just frame the problem for you that you can add value to and help me understand.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, you know, it's very clear. I know that for a fact. Employers not happy.
No.
Across the board, if you look at how many employers are happy versus unhappy with the situation, it's more likely to be unhappy, but they have to deal with the situation. We're trying to make the most out of it. And I'm referring to the situation where people feel that they are entitled to work from home without any regards to a return on their investment. They don't see that when you hire someone, it's an investment. I use the word "let's make it work," meaning I don't care where you work from, as long as that return on investment is where it needs to be. For example, Dr. Connie, as you know, if you hire someone in sales, I use the sales role because it's very easy to demonstrate the value of that, because it's a pure numbers. With sales, you need to make $100,000, and we can look at how much we pay them and go, what kind of return on investment? You know, if you're a developer, it's hard to or HR it's hard to articulate the value and the return on investment. So let's use the example of sales. And this person needs to earn about 250,000 on target earning, meaning let's say base salary of 150 and $25,000 a quarter. That's 250,000 a year. For us, or for any sort of B2B business, they need to be doing at least between minimum 2 times that, but ideally 3. So they need to do 500,000 or 750 a year in sales for that investment to be right. So for me, and I go, you can work from Mars if you want, but I need that between 2 and 3 ROI. See, they don't think like that. They think I'm entitled to work from home and I need to be working from home tomorrow, even though they are not prepared enough. There's no clarity on what they need to achieve. They haven't showed that they are succeeding and that return on investment starts to happen. They don't think like that. There's no enough maturity in the environment. The whole sympathy or over-sympathy that came through COVID and it became an entitlement as opposed to, that's a conversation. You have a role. The company needs to be clear about what you need to achieve. And you need to demonstrate you can achieve it with this particular lifestyle, whatever that is, and then you go ahead and do it. I don't think they see it just as an entitlement, one-sided.
Yeah.
And that is why a lot of employers, when I say they're unhappy, I feel the environment that was created, the community now shames employers if they just want to say, hold on, can I just have a conversation about your ROI? They've been shamed too much where it's hard for them to stand out and say, this is a business. Yeah. This is a business needs to return investment to shareholders. And that simple fact has to, boil down all the way to the bottom, to every single role in the company. So let's have this conversation. So how do you see it? And how can we create that win-win?
Listening to you, it's one word keeping coming into my mind is a short-termism. Short-termism. I mean, it's nothing criticizing anything of employer size feeling. I kind of have that feeling. I know that it's really important to get returns of the investments. From our research, evidence show sometimes those flexible work arrangements return of the investment does not come within 1 year, within 2 years, within 3 years. It does come after 8 years.
Okay.
So can you wait? I think in the DNA or in this stage of everybody running so fast, we need to create wealth. We have to get more money. We have to get more productivity. We need this $20 million to do something, but you have to do it within 1 year, 2 years. I have talked to I wouldn't say hundreds, but I think almost I can say hundreds during this past 4 years, talking to the industry people, what they want us to do to deliver research output within 3 months, 6 months, while this research actually need to do the good research, take 3 years, 5 years, sometimes even 10 years. And a lot of stuff we have in here, right? It was because 100 years, somebody willing to spend time to actually do the basic research in order for us to have this kind of modern facility right now. Without those time commitments, you cannot achieve a better outcomes. So I would be kind of quite concerned about it's always about money. Because in the last 50 years, we have created more wealth for the past 2,000 years. Are we happier? Are we better off? Are we more healthy?
I don't think so.
We actually compromise the wealth with well-being. So this is a message I cannot say, and I'm glad. I'm glad with this forum I can talk to you about it.
So
and
when you say, are we? I'm just trying to help you here with your facts that you present.
Yes.
Are we happier? Are we healthier? You're saying, for example,
we are wealthier.
Diseases and mental, physical diseases like diabetes and obesity and all kind of problems, heart diseases, cancer, etc., is higher than anything else ever in history.
And the mental health
mental illness is high. Happiness, etc., definitely not high enough. So you're saying we're not better off, but we've created wealth in the last, say, 50
Yeah.
years, more than we've ever, in the history of humans, we've created.
Yes.
For 10,000 years.
Yes.
Interesting fact.
Yes.
Interesting question.
Yes. Yeah. I think this is what I have read. Seeing that we do creating more wealth, even personally, we're creating more wealth than our parents have, right? So we are not better off.
Yes.
We are not
as our well-being.
Yeah, as our well-being, we are busier. We kind of hurry all the time. Yeah. So can we actually looking at, because all my research funding, I try to looking at well-being, need to take care of.
So
it.
what's the definition
Because
of well-being then?
People is,
how do you define someone? You're saying we're not better off. So what are the fundamentals that you judge that based on?
Yeah,
to
fundamental. There's a lot of
status
indicator.
Of the well-being now compared to the status of a well-being, 500 years ago, before the Industrial Revolution completely, let's say.
Yeah, I think again, this academic definitions of well-being can be, subjective well-being, objective well-being. If you talk about subjective well-being, you just have one indicator: are you feeling okay today, right? If you talk about objective well-being,
based on what? You just explain to people.
Yeah, if you talk about objective well-being, it's a well-being is influenced by the number of things, psychologically, physically, economically. You also need to have a good political system to actually contribute to feel, you are free to do things. So there's a number of indicators according to the United Nations definitions.
According to you, what is it?
My is really need to feel, feel healthy physically and psychologically as well.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So I think you need to be able to feel healthy. You don't feel ill.
What's psychologically healthy? What's the number one indicator in your mind?
Psychological healthy is, you're not subject to like bully and harassments at work. You always say, go faster. I think that wouldn't be healthy.
Go faster doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to always come with bullying.
No, I agree with you.
They don't have to be, they're not necessarily related.
Yes.
Yeah, they can be two different things. Yes, bullying, this can be done via bullying, and which is not sustainable and stupid and bad. But what I'm saying is sometimes people want to go fast because they choose to and because they're motivated based on with complete freedom and choice. Yeah. Meaning you make more money, you learn more, etc. A combination of all of the above.
Yeah, also expectation too, go faster. One person, have expected the other one. At workplace especially, I think leaders and managers may be expecting, your staff member to do the way that you do instead of really finding out, what motivated employees for performance, what actually motivated them to be creative, to be innovative. So
let's start from scratch about this. This is interesting. Okay, so you seem to have started this conversation by using the word short-term versus long-term goals. Yeah. So so if we bring the high performance topic into this, so therefore you're saying high performance doesn't mean you're going fast. It's you've got to think about sustainability and the long-term goals. Yep. And you've got to measure not what will happen in 12 months, what will happen in 3 or 5 or 10. Yeah. And say, how do we get there? Because maybe in the first few years leading to that, you're not performing as well as others, but maybe right at the end, you're going to blow everybody out of the water. Is that the kind of thing?
Isn't it your technology company is like that? A lot of technology company, Alibaba, you sell is the evidence.
When you say like that,
the first of 3 years, it's just like struggling, build a company in the factories, in a garage. But you value these people. You work together with them. You actually care about their family, right? Yeah. So you continue building relationship. And then continue build on that. And then you suddenly, it's these people who actually help you. And it is their well-being and their mental health who actually continue contribute to the company's sustainable growth and development. So technology companies is a great example to show that. And this is
To show
my
what?
argument.
Sorry, to show what?
To show you need time for people to build. And it's important to actually, especially in the knowledge era, I think it's really important to center around the people instead of center around just the technology, just the material gains, because it is the people who are actually going to sustain your company for the long term. And another example would be what we already seen back in 1980s. There's a lot of writing compare American company with a Japanese company, and you'll see that a lot of Japanese company, they will lasting longer because they are more kind of people-centered sort of management. Yeah. You don't believe that?
No. I'm so sorry. Completely. Yeah. I have no idea. Yeah, I've never known anything about the topic. I thought that Japanese, at least we are made to believe. I have no facts. I've never been to Japan. So just from observing or bits and pieces, never researched the topic. That maybe Japanese culture is maybe the opposite in terms of they're treated like robots or something, I'm told. So clearly I'm being misled. You're saying that Japanese culture at work, it is more people-centered compared to the Americans.
At least I think before the new influence, like our world probably largely influenced by the American, even in our field of the HR, there's a lot of thinking it's actually coming from Americans' development back in 1980s. HR was branched out of like Harvard University's thinking, or Chicago University thinking about new way of managing people at work.
Okay.
And I think Japanese probably follow some of those. Like they make a redundance of lifetime employment, and Chinese follow the suit as well. You don't have the long contract. You actually all based on short-termism now.
Sure. I was speaking with someone, a organizational psychologist, about high-performance teams. And it came down, what I thought I learned. I'm not speaking for her at all. She's amazing at the topic, but I've learned a few things from her, and I've reflected on my own experiences. And one small conclusion, I don't want to conclude the whole conversation into one statement, but one of these conclusions, one of these facts or gems, if you like, that I got from the conversation was performance is about the quality, not about how many hours people are doing. It's about what's the quality that of their work per hour. Yeah. So somebody could be doing in 6 hours more work compared to someone what other people could be doing in 18 hours. If this other person is unhappy and doesn't feel motivated, doesn't feel respected, doesn't feel part of the team, the journey, brought onto the journey because they are on board with the journey, they believe in it, they're respected, and their well-being is looked after. And that sixth person, you compare that with someone who is motivated and happy, and they feel that they can be themselves at work, meaning they can be themselves, whereby everybody knows that they might be psychologically diverse or neurologically diverse. They might be able to perform better than the other person, 6 hours versus the 18. So it's about the quality.
Definitely.
Right?
It's about quality. And I, through my kind of teaching leadership as well as teaching performance management, it is very good you emphasizing like star performers, but I think in the organization, if you want to sustain the long-term developments of the organization, it's really important to build a team. And high performance is not about high-performing individual is important, but high-performing teams.
Okay, talk to me about
high-performing team is not about one person working 18 hours, but she or him during the 18 hours maybe have a lot of organizational citizenship behavior. They're helping others, caring for the team, making team more coherent but you don't see them actually doing anything outcome like salespeople, getting the money in. But is that only the organization, only salespeople there to get money?
No.
isn't it?
Absolutely not.
Yes, the profit is generated by 20%, and the General Electric's Jet Wells theories, those 20/80 rules. I don't think that's always work in organization. I would challenge
What is
that
the
sort of
2080
thinking.
rule you're referring to? Sorry, can you
That
elaborate?
used to be like Jet Wells say, I have to get rid of 20% non-performing, underperforming people in my annual performance review.
Okay.
It's not right. Your organization not just built by the 20% of the people. You built by the 100% of the people.
Okay.
And these people had a compositions of different skill set and different personality. One person may not be helping at all, but then they are very creative in their own little process. But the other person is actually very helping get you sandwiches, coffee in for the entire group, making the cultures of the organization like more belonging, inclusive, right? So this coming to the topics about workplace inclusivity. You need a teams. You don't need individual. Individual, they can go just travel and do anything with that.
What's the difference?
Organization, it's about a group of the people. It's not just about one person.
So how do you measure team performance versus individual performance then? So you're saying...
This is, again, your performance management. That's coming to my topics now.
Let's do it.
I mean, your measurements of of course, you can set up all these, smarts and everything, but you got to really be conscious about, performance is not always about the objectives kind of outcomes, measurable. Yes, it need to be measured, but some of the behaviors, you can still using behavior sort of measurement like measure. So you had to distinguish between, what is a hard kind of output, what is a softer output, and doing the evaluation based on both, rather than
let's start again.
On a tough debate. Yeah.
Let's learn from you.
No, not learn from me. I'm sharing information.
Sure.
I might be kind of different from what I'm thinking, but I just do.
I'm going to break it down.
What I'm thinking. Yeah.
Hold on. I'm going to simplify it for us so we can really come to an understanding. I'm a company.
Mm-hmm.
You're the leader of a company, a CEO of a company. And this company was created by about 10 people that gave you $10 million, $20 million. They put their money into the company and they trusted you to run this company. So they invested $10 million and you're the CEO. You've hired about 10, 20 people, 30 people, and you're running the company. So when you talk about short goals and long goals, individual performance, team performance, from the shareholders' point of view, they want to see return on their investment. So from the very beginning, you would set the expectation to them. You're saying, look, you would ask sort of, what are you expecting here? By when, etc. And you set the expectation whereby you're not putting pressure on people or you, what are we actually talking about here? I think you've already said some interesting stuff. I'm really grateful. I feel I've learned already some stuff, but I'm trying to connect all these dots together. The long-term, the building a team, about the team, not about the individual. So you said some interesting stuff. I'm trying to put it in practice here. What does that mean for a leader? If you're giving this advice to a CEO who's managing the company on behalf of shareholders, what are you actually saying to them?
Interesting. I think I'm a researcher. I haven't run the company in such a big scale, but what I really know about what is helpful and what is research already show is that you need to set a goal. But how many companies manager is really sit down with every individual and set a clear goal? Because research show that the only factors lead to better performance is goal setting.
And so you believe in that yourself?
I believe in that because I believe in the research evidence, showing that. But I also believe there's a major gaps between research outputs and the practices.
Sure.
But when you go down, research also show the manager actually don't set the goals, don't really do it. So if I do have a $10 million, I would do, if I'm running the company, I would really set a goal. And then, because the SMART goals there, one of them has to be acceptable, smart. A is actually acceptable by the employees. So employees or the subordinates, the manager have to sit down together. Let's set a goal. Let's see your skill, knowledge. You can actually achieve this goal within either 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. So you do that. Every levels of the manager have to do that. I'm a researcher. I'm not manager.
Sure.
I can only share with you. This is evidence.
Sure.
But in terms of practice, can I do that? If you give me a $10 million, I don't know. I enjoy doing my research, right?
I respect that.
So yeah. So
what
if you're doing that,
you're saying as a CEO,
you should do that because the
set
research
goals
show,
with
very
the
clear.
individuals and the teams, and with your board as well.
With the board, yeah.
And match these goals.
And matching KPI, I still believe KPIs is important.
Align the goals
with the goals
of the board,
or the board,
and stuff.
Every level down. With university now doing that, although number of the researchers may not like it, but I see the logic of it. Why do we do it? Because it's important. If you don't do that, you don't achieve the goal. No goals, no path, isn't it? Like a bit like a map. No map, no way. You don't know where to go. You get lost. So I totally believe that if you give me $10 million, that's the first thing. Depending on, you have to very specific, you've got to achieve 6 months reasonably. You're going to achieve 6 months, but the large company for $10 million, you're talking about long-term goal. So I think have to have that vision. What about 10 years? Where do we want to see?
Okay.
And working towards that.
All right, let's park that for a moment. We'll come back to it. Let's talk about the performance of an individual versus the performance of a team, but also from what I've learned from speaking with, bless her, I forgot her name now, an organizational psychologist. And she talked about the importance of well-being from the point of view of to be able to bring all yourself to work, meaning not to be hiding certain things. She said that there's a huge cost if someone has got, for example, anxiety or they have ADHD, any of those. Yeah, absolutely. Go for it. I'm going to talk for a minute. If someone has got any mental illness issues and they have to hide it at work because they don't feel that the environment encourage them to be themselves. They feel that it's going to be used against them. They might lose respect by their team. They might be perceived and looked at differently. If that environment gives them the impression that that's going to be a negative thing for them to reveal all themselves and be themselves, they start to hide these things, and there's a cost to that. There's a cost for you to be hiding this all the time. And that is, for example, one big example of the performance is going to degrade. The performance is going to suffer because this person can't be themselves. They can't bring all themselves to work. That constant hiding. She described it as image management kind of thing. So you're managing how people are perceiving you all the time. So part of your brain is working all the time to hide these things too, because you're worried how people are perceiving you. You're trying to put on that smile. You're not feeling great, but you put that fake smile.
Yeah.
That has a cost on us.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah?
I mean, she's pretty right. There's a figure showing that 75% of this is the American figure. 75% of Americans basically come to the office like a zombies. You see, so it's not about absenteeism. Absenteeism is actually cost Australian business lots of money, but presenteeism now is actually double up.
Presenteeism, explain that. I've never heard it. I've never heard that before.
It's a bit like this organizational psychology say the same thing, I'm present, but I'm not here.
Presentism.
I'm present, not here, because I don't feel safe here. I don't feel easy to talk about my idea here. I don't feel inclusive here.
Yes.
So basically my mind running out, and you're talking about somebody who actually doing work for other things. They're just surfing the internet and just enjoy playing games or whatever, because their mind is not at work. So it's a presenteeism now costing the business $1 billion, and it's hidden. So, and you talk about the second point that I actually spend a whole module to try to understand why employees have underperformed. So employee underperform. Remember that HR is a
Dr. Connie, you have 1 hour to talk about that. Is that enough? Take
1
your
hour,
time.
so
Hit
I
me
can
with
have
it.
a lunch
Let's
with
go.
you
Why?
afterwards.
So the topic you're talking about right now is why employees at work underperform.
Underperform.
Let's talk
right?
about that.
Let's talk about this. You develop a HR software, but I think you probably also understand because you're bringing in lots of functions of HR. Any functions of HR does not function stand alone. Right?
Of course.
You cannot just say, I do really well in recruitment, we got fair hiring, but you don't do onboarding well, then you don't do performance evaluation well, you don't pay people well. So all of those have to
Absolutely.
be connected.
Yeah.
When you point to the employee, you definitely already assess this employee's capability, their criteria, their qualifications to fit the job. You trust this person can do the job. Then you hire them.
Sure.
What's wrong? Within 3 months, they underperform. You tell me what's wrong.
Interesting question.
You tell me. Is that onboarding wrong? CEO nowhere to find? No manager do the goal setting? No follow-up? No checking? Already. In research show, the successful onboarding, how long do you think will take? Is
3
that
months?
enough? 3 months?
Maybe more, yeah. 6 months? 12 months?
More?
18 months?
2 years.
2 years.
Onboarding require 2 years for the person to actually feel part
My God,
of the
Dr.
team.
Connie, a lot of industries, they think the average tenure of an employee is 2 years.
And
How can onboarding be 2 years if the average tenure is 2 years? People leave after 2 years.
Exactly. And then you're talking about, I often asking people, do you feel the same way when are you feeling the same way when you're just getting married and after 5 years of marriage? Or even just 2 years of marriage or
No,
1
but I
year
mean,
of
you
So
date
the
and you're engaged. That's your onboarding maybe.
Yeah.
You know that person for normally a couple of years before you marry them. And maybe that's what you're saying.
Yeah, because the people
need
may
that 2
know your
years.
company, but
Okay.
when you're really into the marriage, because employment relationship is like a marriage, isn't it?
Yes.
You build a relationship with a two totally different person, now come together, work. How much time people spend in work? Not nowadays, probably half of the time because you bring the work home, right? From work. So a third, roughly say a third.
Yeah. You might finish work at 5, 6, travel for an hour or two. You get home
More.
7, 8.
Yeah.
You go to bed maybe by 10, 11. You spend only 2 hours with that person and 8 hours at work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
right.
you actually more time at work, and then nobody really cared about how do you building that relationship at work. It's so important for the organization. So this is why our Center for Workplace Excellence
Okay, so let's go back to the question.
Try to do.
Let's go back to the question.
Yeah.
Why employees underperform at work? How about if we turn the question into the top 3 reasons?
Yeah.
Can we do it that way? What's in your research? What do you think the number one reason why people underperform at work?
You want me to talk about the top 3 reasons,
Sure.
or you want to talk about like why people are underperforming?
What it is and why. Absolutely.
Yeah,
No, take
what
your
causing
time.
that? Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm going to go through one by one and take your time explaining why.
Individual. Let's talk about individual first. Individual might coming in saying that all my values is not resonate with the company's value at all. So they just like, I don't want it. This is really boring place.
Okay, and they discover that
and they
after
discover
a few
that
months.
after they're coming in. A bit like a marriage, discover these people who never brush their teeth.
Yeah.
So I just like got sick of it. And even if I'm telling him to do that, they don't, because they can't change the habits that you develop as an organization. So for the individual, rather I take an exit instead of asking organization to change. So that could be individual reason. But I think
misalignment of values.
Misalignments
that
of
employees
the
discover after a few months.
Yes.
And then they
that's
start to
possible.
become demotivated and eventually leave.
And the job is not what they expected, because it's about managing expectations. So
that would be false employer value proposition. In the sense you're advertising the job or your brand in a false way compared to really what it's like.
Yeah. And then
because
the second, that's exactly what you say. It's a gap. You policies say, you advertise say, we are a very inclusive organization. We offer flexible work arrangement. By the time in here, you happen to have a manager who really don't implement the organizational policy.
Yes.
So this is a policy and practice gap there. And you don't feel happy about it. It's about psychological contract management on a day basis, interaction with your...
You're familiar with the employer value proposition, EVP,
yeah, of course.
Yeah, I spoke with someone who does that for a living. They've been doing it for 25 years, helping companies. They're doing that. And I had a podcast with him for about an hour and a half, speaking about that. And it's not a small thing. Sometimes it's not even doable. And sometimes it takes years. Changes are significant to align what's happening in the company with what you really want to be. So if you say, I want to attract women to join the army, you can't just put a nice ad to say, it's a great environment for women. It might take you 5 years to become this kind of organization before you can put this ad up. Otherwise, it's false. I'm not going to call it false advertising. But it's a wrong EVP. It's false EVP, and people will end up not staying. They will come and leave. Sure. So that's the first reason. Is there any more you want to talk about this reason, or can we move to the next reason?
I think,
that misalignment of
is that enough?
values.
Is
Up
that
to you
enough?
entirely.
So
Take your time.
I tended to seeing as an individual, and then organizational, and then of course external kind of. So I think in that way. In the organization, and organization is about teams and it's about manager. So I think it's a lot more things that our business school try to teach the students to say, how you can improve your practices as a manager or as a leader to actually work with the employee, and then make sure that there is a mentorship in place, that coaching in place, so that people can feel more included within the teams and feel they are contribute something. So of course your job design, they're coming through. If the job you kind of promise too much in the advertisement but don't deliver, you say you're going to grow, but you never provided training opportunity for the employees. So that's all organizational reason. People feeling that they don't have growth opportunity, they expected that but they didn't get it. And they don't have a challenging job. Sometimes it's even autonomy. So because that's important for the employee to be motivated continuously.
So we talked about the values not being aligned.
Yeah, the first is the individual reason, right? Is the employees.
Okay.
Yeah.
The second one you're saying comes from the
organizational.
And that is by not providing the training, not allowing that person to be share their views and be themselves.
Yeah. So that's all organizational issue, isn't it? Like organization.
I'm trying to understand that logic, how you splitting them like that.
So maybe that's over, not splitting up, but just imagine that you have your child to grow up. You can't expect it they do the 5 years. They continue grow. If organization, the place that they spend 3 or even half of their life in there, and they don't grow them, how would you feel as an employee? So this is organization. I mean, although the training or development is very much individual kind of initiative, you had to feel that you wanted to grow. But it's still organization need to provide it that sort of platform for growth. A bit like, in a larger environment, you got to have a good school, right? In a good educational teacher, manager. So the same thing within the organization, you need to have that platform for people to grow. And I think that organizational factor is really important to actually contribute to underperformers or contribute to exits of the employee. As you probably heard a phrase, 75% of people leave the organization not because they don't like the organization or don't like their job, but because they don't like their manager. So that's another.
I mean, we're touching on so many things. I'm just trying to put a structure to it a little bit. All these are great. I think you touched about 5 things already.
Yeah.
Values not being aligned, and values could be the fact that this company is bad for the environment, for example, that kind of values?
That could be for the young generation, Gen Z. We had the research showing that, young Gen definitely looking for the organization who are based on their value, like greening organizations certainly will attract younger people a bit more. So generational differences definitely is there.
And would you feel a Gen Z have got high expectation from the point of view of being able to share their opinion, for their opinion to be heard? They have high expectation compared to, say, our generations or the Gen X or Y.
I don't see that as a research evidence, although there's a lot of perception out there in the media talk about it. I don't believe that is the case.
Okay.
I don't have research evidence for that.
So
and I think people are the same. They like to be heard, but I don't know whether it's because of, the generational differences.
Because that could be
expectation.
value alignment as well.
I think
that could fall under the value.
Yeah.
I don't feel the environment, the culture there is one that encourages people to speak their mind and be heard. Not necessarily they're bullying or they're rude. They just don't provide the forums enough for me to be able to speak my mind. And when I speak it, yes, I'm heard, but it doesn't go anywhere. So do you know what I mean? So that becomes more, it's not like I don't like them. They're nice people, but my value's not aligned.
So and then my voices are not heard.
Yeah,
so that's very common.
They're not rude. They're not suppressing me.
But
they're not
I don't
rude to
see
me.
the difference between this generation and our generation. We probably feel the same way. I mean, when the first time we enter into the workforce, I don't feel that I was
think
heard.
this is the number one, in my opinion, why would people leave or not leave.
Yeah.
In my opinion, your voice to be heard is
it's
the number
really
one.
Important.
It trumps money. It trumps growth, training and growth and stuff. In my opinion, it's the number one.
Yeah, the communication.
And growth number two and money number three, in my opinion.
I think you're pretty right. I think everybody this is coming to my also areas of the research. It's about inclusiveness. It's about hearing each other, listening to each other. And it's so important that in the performance management or performance review, it's about listening.
Yeah.
It's not about, talking, isn't it? Listening to, what you're doing well. You tell us which area you're doing well. And then we give it observations of what you also hear us out. So it's a two-way communication. It's not always about top-down to say, I get you to do this. Isn't it? So I think it's really important to hear each other out and listening to each other.
Similar to what's going on right now. I mean, this whole, maybe I've always been a rebel myself personally. Maybe I take that more seriously than an average person, this whole thing about opinion heard. I've always maybe lived all my life with a chip on my shoulder about my voice to be heard. Since I was a kid, I've always been a rebel, whereby I don't take things at face value. I don't believe too much in rules. I'm happy to break the rules, question the rules, and break them if they need to be broken. Yeah. And I guess that's why I take that whole thing of, because I believe it's so fundamental. You see, if you know your opinion can be heard, then it means that in itself says that you have a system to be able to speak if you are being oppressed, if you are being bullied. What I mean is, it's so fundamental, it trumps everything else, because that in itself allows for you, if there's bullying, to talk about it, because your opinion can be heard. Do you know what I mean? Like it solves so many problems in itself. It's the most fundamental.
And who facilitated that, building that mechanism?
It's organization.
Yeah.
Totally agree with you.
Isn't it?
Totally
so it is organization's role to play.
Starts from the top.
Yeah, and start from top. Leadership need to take that. Leadership need to call out,
Absolutely.
You got to allow people, all communication need to say, I'm hearing you. Have open door, for you to come to talk to me. I think the best leader, probably the one who has the open door. And then invited people to talk to them and freely share their opinions, even if you don't take them on, but you say you hear them, isn't it? And then you say why you're not taking them suggestion on based on reasoning. So you got a communication open. I think nobody's dumb, not being able to understand if you give them a good reason to say, my daughter does, I can't buy this present for you because these 3 reasons, or you give me 3 reasons why we should do this, isn't it? So if you give them an opportunity to express, I got a reason to do this, and how do I do it? Then you hear them out to see the feasibility of doing it in 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year. Then you got to join sort of action plan there. So it's really about, I think it's really about hearing out and listening to each other, and then not disregard everybody's opinions as trivial. I think that's important. And the third reason that I won't be talking about, it's really the external. You cannot control. Like COVID hit, or I got my family, my child sick. This is external, right?
Yes.
My mother is ill, so I have to, our age, we look after parents, or we look after younger one. I got lots of responsibility here, right? So it doesn't mean that I can't do job, but how do I manage this space between work and life and time, etc.? So I think
flexibility.
Yeah, flexibility coming to, So I think, and research again show there's a lot of benefits especially for women's group. Again, I'm advocating for women who has a caring responsibility, who has probably multiple tasks that they need to manage. So whether they can do the job, yes, they can, but how do they better manage this space between work and life and be able to
so instead of
to manage their boundaries?
Dr. Connie, is it one way to explain that point is to say, look, it's not about what happens between 9 and 5. Maybe you want to look at this person, what they can do between 6 a.m. and, as a matter of fact, 10, 11 p.m.
Yes.
As long the job that you want them to be done, as long as they do it between 6 and 11. As a matter of fact, as long as they do it between Monday at 6 and 10 p.m. on Friday, maybe do it on a weekly basis, even more flexibility. As long as they get done on a weekly basis what they need to get done. Maybe that's one way of us as managers start to look at it.
Yeah, I always think it's not about hours, because you earlier give the examples about 6 and 18. I find that's pretty... We also do the budget, like we have to meet the organizational requirements about how do we deliver the papers, right? But we know, the researcher, we will spend 10 hours in thinking without writing a word, because we are in thinking, right? Same thing with the job, especially knowledge worker. Let me finish.
No, Dr. Connie, they're two different things. What I was saying before. Two different things,
but when you set a goal, it need to be smart goal.
No, there's two things we're mixing.
Outcome.
I think the presentism, the word that you just taught me before, presentism. Presentism. Okay.
Versus absenteeism.
Got to understand what it means. I was just, because I've never heard of it before.
Okay.
So you got that. What you're saying here, someone could perceivably be working for 15 hours, but actually they're hardly working for 2, because really they're not there. They're doing something else. They're playing games or whatever. They're not engaged, etc. That's a separate point. I'm talking about flexibility. I'm saying, and I'm agreeing with you. I'm trying to help your point about this woman this woman that
underperformance, you mean?
No. I'm talking about that requires flexibility. Because they have all these other responsibilities. They're looking after an older parent, and they're looking after grandkids, or helping out with this and helping with that. And I'm saying here, maybe as managers, we need to start to think about what they can achieve. As long as what you want them to achieve in a day, let them do it between 6 and 11. Let them do, I want to work for 2 hours between 6 and 9, and then take a few hours off and come back and do another few. As long as they get it done within that 24 hours, in other words, give them flexibility.
That's a flexibility, basically. I agree, totally agree with you, definitely. And this is what I say, performance management is not about giving hours for people to complete, but giving the task. Expected outcomes of that task. And I think if you're looking at result-oriented performance management kind of tool, it's actually better off than you say, how many time you put it in.
Results.
You got to, like, a bit like we are writing a paper. You just give me one paper you finish in 2 years, but you can't say, how much hour that you put it in. It's different from a teaching, right? Teaching, you can say, okay, I teach this class for 3 hours, and I need, another 3 hours or 6 hours preparation. Even that, it's actually not quite, because it's a knowledge worker. So you can't just say, I use 3 hours. Sometimes you're using more than 3 hours into your teaching classroom. But classroom is set, like 3 hours.
So the underperformance, that was the main topic we're talking about. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are you saying also flexibility is part of underperformance? Meaning, if
I
people,
did not say that. Please, I did not say that. I give you
let me finish the question.
example.
Let me finish
I
the
give
point.
you example to say,
But
you know,
Dr.
there
Connie,
are
let me finish my
three.
point first. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Give me a
Yeah.
minute.
Okay.
I'm saying I'm not putting your words in your
No.
mouth.
Yeah.
But
Please.
are you saying that also if people feel they are not given flexibility, they might start to underperform? I'm just wondering how we got into the flexibility. What was the, how
No,
did we move into that point?
I was more talking about three reasons that could contribute to underperformance. One is individual. I don't have value alignments with the company,
Yep.
so you leave. The second is the organizational reason, because you might have a problem without giving a growth opportunity, training
Yes.
opportunity,
Yes.
mentorship, coaching, inclusiveness policy, etc., etc. The third reason is communal or societal levels of the reasoning, which means people may have other expectations for their life outside work, which
Sure.
means like carrying responsibility, mother has an illness, and this might actually affecting their underperformance. I did not say because of flexibility arrangement, that's totally not my idea.
But that's what you just said. Lack of flexibility can contribute to that person underperforming, no?
Oh, I was more thinking about, at that period of time, and even go back to our most earlier talking about menopause. If you're expecting me to finish up my job within a week, because of this, I experience all these mental exhaustions and body exhaustion, and I needed time for rest. I couldn't do it. So all of these is actually outside the individual organizational control.
Yes.
So that's a sort of societal level or outside.
External
Yeah,
factors.
external
you said.
factors. Yeah.
So,
So that's the three reasons. So I did not say that because of the.
Okay.
It's not about
Okay,
organizational.
okay.
I did not even. Yes, organizational level. Maybe organization
Right.
hasn't got a flexible work arrangement policy in place to allow people to actually go to look after caring. So that might cause in the problem because they had to come here and then their mind to think about, how am my child's doing, how my mother's doing, at work. So they are presentism, so they couldn't really perform well if they are required in the workplace. So do you see what I'm saying? My arguments are slightly different from what you replace. Maybe it's our English kind of lost in
No, I don't think so at all.
Yeah.
No, I think it's just I'm expecting these things to be structured more, but they don't need to be structured. My brain just functions like a mathematician, maybe too much here, and that's not a mathematical equation, maybe.
No, not a mathematical equation. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you need to talk about the person. Again, our research is showing that even if organization has a flexible work arrangement policy in place, take-up rates is actually very low. Because why? There's a stigmatism there. People don't want to be invisible. So they still come to work because work gives them a identity or visual kind of presence in front of all people. Even because a lot of research also showing that impression management, it's actually very effective. So if you know how to manage when you are at workplace, it's actually enhance your opportunity for promotion, for different roles, and etc. So
it's a good thing to have impression management.
I don't know whether it's good things or bad things, but this is about behaviors of the people. Is that good things to buy lots of good stuff? But people buying it, right? There's no value judgment in here, but it's what people are doing.
The organizational psychologist was arguing that a positive impression management is a bad thing. Because you're hiding things. You're putting that fake smile on. You're pretending that you're happy when you're not happy. You're pretending that you're happy when you're depressed. You're pretending that you're calm when you're anxious. That has got a cost.
It adds on individual costs. But, managers still like people who are positive. Do you want everybody coming in complaining all day long? You don't. But in fact, the life it's all about, lots of unsatisfied ends, isn't it? So if you don't allow people to talk about it, so that's why I think support group is important. If you got support group, you're actually helping people to throw out those ends and they release. But there has to be informal sort of arrangement. So I think this is why I say team is important. The person who are organizing lunch gathering, outside organization, gather people to actually complain about it. Probably doesn't matter. They will just talk about it. But manager leaders don't like these sort of things. Unless that you are the listening manager. You allow people to come in and talk about it. So this is a fact of life. In organization, you've been in organization long enough to know. People do complaints, but also those people who are saying yes and be more positive probably advance their career better.
Such an interesting topic, this topic. I want to dedicate a podcast just to it because the Rachel Clement basically it was a very 5-minute conversation about this, so I don't want to trying to create a major conclusion on her behalf, but basically she gave me the impression that it's a negative thing. It impacts on the performance because it's a cost. People are spending time on creating a positive image about themselves instead of being themselves and being able to focus on work. And that she's saying
it's a dark side of the positive psychology, and there has been research showing out that.
Sure, but an HR manager, senior HR manager, I was speaking with, and I was actually sharing that with her about the podcast, and she basically somehow she insinuated, I'm doing a podcast with her in a month's time, 3 weeks time, and she basically insinuated that there's a balance to that. Do you really want to have to talk about everything like that, everything about what you're feeling, stuff? There's maybe a balance. So it seems to be a science that's still not completely solid and firm yet. It's still sort of fluid. Researchers and observers and scientists still maybe trying to find that happy medium of how much, if you're not feeling great, we do want you to come to work and be yourself and stuff, but really, how much can you maybe share and talk about that, and to whom and when? And do you know what I mean? Maybe this. I would love to spend an hour and a half just talking about that with someone. Interesting topic.
I'm not these areas of experts, but I know that in my center there's a group of the people currently research into the psychological safety climates, and that's especially actually dedicated to the research in this area. So as you was mentioning, that research is unfolding because the positive psychology has been on for so long. Everybody think this is good for the workers and for individual, but in fact there's also sign, as you're saying that, and I talk to my colleagues who are in the organization psychology, she does mention that you do need to balance because people have to pretend, becoming more pretentious instead of to be true to yourself, and I think it's I think we know that. I mean, as you probably from your Bible, whatever, they teach people you do need to control your mouth. What
Sorry,
to say,
say it
what
again?
not to say. You do need to control your mouth. Maybe I'm saying too much.
Sure.
But I think for every wise person, you have to choose to what to say or not to say, and that's it's about wisdom.
Sure.
Yeah. So you can't say everything.
Sure.
And you also are bounded by your contracts with the organizations because you do have a code of the conduct, right? So I think all of these things you need to learn, and as an employee, as a person as well, we teach our kids not to say, what to say.
Sure.
Yeah. But still say more of the phrases instead of saying negative things.
Sure.
Because if you don't have anything, like your grandmother told you, if you don't have anything good said about things, shut up your mouth. Don't say.
Stigma. You talked about stigma.
Yeah.
What's the biggest potential stigma that we still have in our society right now? Is it mental illness at the moment, or is it what? At work, for someone to be ashamed, or I guess you can say it like that, being ashamed of being found out that they are what? That they have mental illness, that they are maybe not born in this country, that they have some kind of accent, that is it racism in the sense driven by certain elements of racism, driven by certain elements of stigma against and misunderstanding of mental illness, the lack of acceptance of mental illness, that it's just an illness. What do we know anything? Have you ever sort of read anything like that?
I do not think in that framework in terms of race, in terms of accents, but I do think in terms of the expectations of, the norms, the cultural norms that you self to brought up. Because recently I developed a course on leadership, selves and others, and it struck me that the definitions of a good leader can be bounded by your individual dispositions, your culture background, your experiences.
Sure.
And then you also bounded by time and space. I mean, just imagine before 1945, German people held Hitler as a great leader, but after 1945, he's not, right? And now world probably think he's dictatorship and it's not a good leader, causing so many deaths. Another area that I looking into is about gender and leadership, and I find that's a lot of stigma there, because our leaders' images in the current, every culture probably, and particularly in the current age, we don't have the good female leader that we can actually emulate. And we tended to think good female leader should be the same as a male leader. And that's, to me, it's a stigma. So I see the stigma from that sense that people placing on the other person, which it shouldn't be, because they praising on the other person is bounded by your cultural norm, by your upbringing, by your own personal thinking, and it's not based on research evidence whether she is a good leader or whether she can lead a team effectively or not. Because we don't have that research.
Yeah.
We accumulated research actually based on the male leadership. So I think more in that lens. I do things, if you're looking at that lens, the stigma is actually caused by your own norms, like culture bringing your individual dispositions. And I kind of think that areas of the changes require a longer term to change. There is, about your race, about your accents. This is all coming from individual internal kind of, we call it sing, if you can explain it that, because you got judgment there over other people.
What's the
you
percent?
kind of judging other people based on your position. Same with a disability as well.
Sure. What's the percentage of, an average workplace, right? Across the country in Australia, the percentage of workers, who are in the workplace at this point in time now, meaning between the age of 14 and 65.
65,
yeah, something like that, roughly. The percentage of those individuals, no matter what they do, who either weren't born in this country or their parents, direct parents, weren't born in this country, meaning strongly still affected and understand that culture, meaning they have good perspective about both cultures. They are in Australia, they understand a fair bit about the Australian culture, but they understand their own culture, which isn't Australian, really well as well. Those individuals, I would say at least 50%. Would you agree with that, roughly?
Yeah, I thought every Australian is a migrant. None of them exist.
No, but I've made the question clear in terms of how many generations.
How many born here, you mean?
Well, the people that are either born, either born overseas or their parents born overseas, as opposed to grandparents and stuff, meaning how many generations. Because if you, let's say, your parents were Australians born in Australia, you might not really understand your grandparents' culture that well. You've never even probably gone to that country, and etc. So I want to, let's not worry about those. That's the other category. First category is the people who understand their culture really well, meaning either born in it, meaning somewhere else, or their parents were born somewhere else. Therefore, they have that direct exposure to that culture, and
I
they
thought
understand the
ABS
Australian
have
culture.
that. ABS, Australian Bureaus of the Statistics, has that very clear. So 1 in 4 Australians, in fact, having all the parents, they're born here, but their parents or one of the parents born overseas. So you can see that 25% of the people who are born here, at least, they have one parent. It's actually overseas. Does it make sense?
25%?
Yeah, 20. That's what I saw. This may be a last
I
time
would,
ABS. Yeah,
I would say 50% of the people
I
that
have
are
to
working
check
now
that.
either weren't born in this country, or their parents weren't born in this country, or at least one parent wasn't born in this country.
That would be pretty close, but I have to check that figure.
Okay. So it's a solid percentage, let's call it.
Yes.
Yeah, whether it's 40, whether it's 50, whether it's 35 or 65, I don't think makes too much difference in terms of what I'm about to talk about.
Okay.
So if we make this assumption, decent percentage. And let's say another competing country has got similar situation. Europe is not too much difference. America is not too much difference. The companies that we compete against, China is different. We do compete against China now. China wouldn't be more than 2%, 3%. It's a completely different animal.
Very monotone.
Sure. Let's maybe park that one for a moment. You know what? Maybe we can even include China in this competition.
And Japan as well. I think Japan is very...
Okay, true.
Because they do not allow migrants, not like us. We are very welcome migrants from overseas.
Okay,
but they are immigrant policy basically not allow anybody becoming citizens of their country. The same with China too. Nowadays it's a little bit released, but China it's also have a very stringent requirements for people to become Chinese citizens.
Okay, cool. So what I'm trying to say, when you've got such high percentage of your workforce that fall in that situation, and therefore they are sensitive to how they are perceived. For them, we talked about how for someone to be performing at work, one of the indicators, one of the conditions that will help in improving their performance is for them to be comfortable with who they are, as opposed to have to manage that self-image, that positive self-image. To be themselves, to be say, I was born in France, I was born in the Middle East, I was born in India, I was born in China, whatever that is, and I've got an accent, and I'm proud of both my Chinese heritage and my Australian, how I'm treated in this country, and I love the Australian bush and the water, and this is an amazing country, the democracy element that it gives me, whatever else. I love that, but I'm very proud of my heritage as a Chinese person, as a Japanese, as Middle Eastern, whatever. In saying that, we know that's important for you not to have to feel yourself and be happy at work, because as you said, you spend 8-10 hours at work. And I know the government continues to spend money on improving these things, and hence the word multiculturalism, and investing into this and creating all kind of programs to encourage that and all this. And we're probably better than a lot of other countries. Yeah. But I don't think we're there yet.
No, never.
I don't think we're there yet.
Not yet.
I don't think near enough is spent on that. And I mean, it's funny. I'm not talking about, these things are very interesting. I don't think many people have got the solution for that problem, because what I'm trying to say, it can't be forced. It's not about wokeism and spending $1 billion on forcing things and creating policies and whatever. It's, I think, about leadership. I think we've got to see the leaders practicing these things. When you see a cowboy of a prime minister or a minister, and the way they talk maybe about certain things, especially if they're being recorded outside of work, and you can see that there's a sense of subtle racism in their tone about how they're referring to someone who isn't maybe Australian, or an accent, or being in the cab and how they treated the cab driver or whatever. This is the thing that will make the difference, not spending money on policies and educations and stuff. It's about real examples by real leaders. What do you think about that?
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I think need a leadership to take a diversity inclusion policy and practices to the next level.
Yeah.
I agree with you also. We are very fortunate to be in this country. I think this is a terrific country, actually embrace multiculturalism. We've been benefactors for this sort of system, but there's long way to go. And the reason for long way to go is it seems at the moment people addressing the problem, even in research field too, in isolation. So one of my PhD students currently actually investigated from an intersectional lens to looking at what is a HR policy and practices impact on individual with the intersectional lens. For example, myself or yourself, we have the cultural identity, but I always have women plus race, ethnic background. So the previous policy and practices probably not effective because they're using a blanket policy. For give you example, we talk about flexible work arrangement. It doesn't apply to everyone, right? It might be applied to somebody who maybe was more, with the women, or your position, your income is probably higher, you are more in a professional role, so that it also have to be intersected with the roles that you play within the organization. So we haven't really get to that stage in order to find out what is the most effective. But I think we are step forward. Because just imagine, back in 1970, there's still white Australian policy in place. But now at least you got those anti-discrimination law in place. And then you got all these Equal Opportunities Act in place to allow that women's or ethnic group of people to apply for the job based on the merits. But I think changing people's, stigmas and their perception, it takes time, and they need a leadership. You've got to be able to have leaders out there to call out, it is discrimination, it is discriminations. So we need a lot of leaders to do that. And I cannot comment on anything on these friends because I haven't really looked into that. I only know this is a difficult issues to address just to looking at Diversity Council Australians figures to define what is a diversity. At the moment, I try to even understand, what is a diversity? As you earlier mentioned, is that diversity is about people who having a gender issues, or people who have a racist identity, or people who have born in here, they claim to be Australian, but their parents who are actually overseas, etc., etc. So even we cannot understand that, the clear definitions of diversity. So unfortunately, I don't have much comments on that.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. What are the key differences when it comes to HR between, say, Australia and China? We don't have any understanding what corporate, if that word exists, even, I'm pretty sure it exists, corporate HR in China like, or corporate culture in China like. Is it really different from us?
I give you two examples of differences at the moment, because again, HR is very much influenced by the institutional framework.
Okay.
If you're looking at HR from a compliance point of view, we have to abide by Australian anti-discrimination law, equal opportunity law, in order to design our organizational HR policy and practice. OHS is another thing. I think China have rapid developments into these areas. So they do have a labor laws in place back in 2010, in fact. And then in terms of how company actually quickly adapt and then develop their organizational policy and practices, that's still under the research area. China have a retirement plan there in place, like we have super fund. Sure. They do have differences in terms of retirement plan, and that's affecting millions of people. They have a times limit there. If you are working this time, you actually enjoy the full retirement wages after you retire. But the rest of people, they probably need to buy the insurance in order to fund their retirement. So that's a bit of differences in there. The second difference is, I think, China, because it's under the Communist Party rule, larger company, probably over 100 people, their senior positions need to be monitored by the Communist Party.
Monitored?
Yes. So, for example, they do have a party secretary sit on a senior executive team. And sometimes they probably are the major decision makers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Any
that's
company
that
over 100
appointments.
people.
Yeah, appointments of the appointments of the senior executive. It's actually very much ruled by the government.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's probably slightly different from
That's a
us.
big difference. How can you
Yes.
create a
And
company
the
if the
third
government
difference-
tells you who's going to lead it?
So, but that's just their
The senior leader, like the
senior leader.
CEO, is decided by the government?
They have a called a party secretary. So if you're looking around the company
is
over 100, even the private companies,
Yeah, I'm
over
talking about
100
private
people,
company.
yes, they have to have the party membership in that party committee in the company.
In the committee, it's different, but I thought you said the CEO is hired by the...
When I say CEO, you for example, managing director, they do have like deputy managing director. Sometimes managing director is appointed by the governments, and the deputy sometimes it's deputy.
And so how can that be true and they can be competitive? It doesn't make sense.
Oh,
Something is missing in my mind.
Missing in your mind because I think China, although claim itself as a marketized economy, I think it's still very much based on the state planning, sort of.
But they're competitive, aren't they?
What do you mean competitive?
Their companies in their individual fields, they can produce products of a greater value than others. And
They're
good
very
in many ways. I mean,
competitive.
look at the cars, for
Yeah.
example, right now. Their cars is competing with Tesla, and they're
Yes.
sold everywhere because they're good and cheap, electric cars.
Yes. Yeah.
So
They're
how
very-
can you run a company to be effective in competing on the global stage if the government appoints the leader? It doesn't make sense.
Why not? Because the
It can't work.
leader
No.
appointed may be very competitive.
I would say that I don't know anything about business if this makes
Yeah.
sense.
Mm.
You cannot create a company
Mm-hmm.
that can be competing with anything and do anything good if the government tells you who the leader is. On the other hand, if you're saying maybe if there's a board and a committee, they have one out of 10 to be there as an observer to tell them they're doing something wrong, or that's cool, but not necessarily
they are
too much
in the
worried about.
decision making chair. Yeah, I can send you some.
So you're
thing to
saying
read, yeah.
if the government has got 5
If you
billion,
don't believe me, yeah,
I can't believe it.
I'm
sorry.
I'll send you.
So I'm going to
something
give you an
read.
example. In
Yeah.
Australia, you're saying the Albanese government
Yeah.
can say we're going to invest $100 billion
Yeah.
into a company
Yeah.
to produce cars, and we're going to make that compete with the Chinese cars,
Yeah.
and we're going to appoint who's going to run it, and it's going to work.
Yeah, doesn't
doesn't
work
make
in
sense.
here. So as
Doesn't work
I earlier,
anywhere.
my presumption, as I say,
The determination.
determined is by the institutional framework. Whatever the HR, isn't it? We HR here operate under Australian institutional framework.
I understand.
Because
yeah.
you asked
We're
me the
influenced by-
differences. That's what I give you the differences.
Yeah, but we jumped into the leadership. You're saying the CEOs are hired by the government, and I'm going,
Yes.
how can China be even functioning? They are competing. They're selling better cars, creating better AI products. They're competing in more than 10,000 categories, and
Yes.
they are
Yes.
the preferred products. It's sold everywhere. That's why China, US, America, they're everywhere. How can that happen if it's hired by government representatives? That company would never be able to compete. It would be a failed company within a month if a government representative is making the commercial decisions, as opposed to keeping an eye on anything politically sensitive. They are two different things. I'm not denying the influence of governments in corporate, but I'm just saying when it comes to competition, it's about ingenuity, it's about ideas, it's about strategies, about the passion and the incentive of these leaders to want to compete and win. A government representative doesn't give a shit or know about that.
I think your mindset is very different from what Chinese government think. So I think your mindset, because we are all living in this democracy kind of system, we can't understand why do they do what they do and how effective they are.
The
doing
law
what
of
they
winning
do.
in business is the same.
Yeah.
What
But then, mind you, I'm talking about appointed somebody by the party. It's not anybody. Is these somebody still need to be selected and still need to be firm and going through those party selection criteria.
So they might be good, you're saying?
For example, still good.
Well, clearly they're good because they're competing, they're winning.
Yeah, they're both winning.
So maybe that system works. Maybe we should do the same.
We should do the
They've
same.
beaten
I don't
us.
know. I'm just telling you the facts. I'm not giving any value judgment, which one is better, which one is working on. We haven't got that research.
No.
I probably need to send you a
saying,
paper. Yeah.
They seem to be winning now at key elements.
And then, we're talking about
AI, technology,
Yeah.
Building submarines, building aircraft carriers. They've just launched their first or something. Cars, electric cars, competing with Tesla, producing them cheaper and better. I spoke with Melbourne with all these Uber drivers. Everybody is saying the Chinese government, the Chinese cars, can't remember the name of the car, has that funny, looks like Tesla
KN.
from a difference.
KN.
It's got it's like a diamond.
Or Great Walls. Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Everybody's driving it. They said 38,000
cheaper,
brand new,
yeah.
and it's amazing. It works. It's reliable. I sat with them. I took so many drives in when I was in Melbourne. They're everywhere. And so they are competing, and maybe we should learn from their system. Look, maybe we need more interference from our governments. Maybe we have too much democracy. I don't know. I'm joking clearly, but it's interesting. It's interesting.
I'm just telling you the difference because you asked me. I give you and I haven't got to three yet, and you started to make a comments on this. The third is the role of the trade union. So we'll probably hate trade unions here.
Some people hate it,
business,
not everyone.
Yeah, business maybe. And the trade union membership since I came to Australia continue dwindling in here, right? But in China, almost like everybody need to join the trade unions, like memberships. Like
you have to.
It is part of because. The role of trade union is actually work closely with the manager in terms of decision making. I mean, if I can say the close model that they will have.
If the company is controlled by the government, why do you need the trade union?
It just seemed that all China councils of the trade union coming down to
the idea of the trade union is to provide this alternative in the sense.
More as a role of caring for employees.
Yes. So. Okay. So, right. So you're saying, that's amazing from the government to say that we're still encouraging the voice of the employee, although we control the company. According to you, you're saying they control every company under over 100 employees, but they're still saying we'll provide this other entity called the trade union that can advocate for the employee against even us, the government, because we run the company, according to you. That's an interesting
Not against,
balance.
but more collaborative with the management. So the closest I could say is like worker representatives in German.
But
at least worker representative actually can negotiate like wages increases.
That's what I mean. They're negotiating with the government.
In China, no.
Oh.
Yeah, they just have putting in place.
So why do they have it?
So I actually did a bit of study on that. What is the role of trade unions in China?
Yeah, what is it then? Why the government is spending all that money to continue to run this trade union if they control them?
Yeah, it still play the roles of hearing the employees' voices and then caring about employee welfare. So they still do a bit of those roles. So I believe the recent kind of how do you define the retirement funds and health fund? Maybe, I haven't really looked into that. Maybe it's subject to the kind of voices up,
Was influenced by that, you're saying, shaped by that?
Yeah, could be.
Interesting.
So that would be the three areas. I think that's a fundamental differences in terms of HR.
I know that you're surprised that I took a lot of time talking about the point that you made, how the leadership of companies over 100 employees is decided and appointed by the government. Why? Because that is nothing that dictates everything.
Mm.
This is such a strong point. Okay,
Mm.
thank you for getting us a little bit into the corporate.
If you are interested, I can send you
I'm
some
very
more
interested.
papers to
I'm very
read it,
interested.
and
Yeah.
see whether there's maybe there's evaluations coming out as well, how effective that will be.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether there's a comparison. I haven't read any comparison study because we don't have anything compare with. None of any Western,
no one in the Western
countries
world
doing
even
that.
is ready to read about China because of the stigma.
Yeah,
Because
possibly.
China is just the way it's depicted by the Western world, that is just like almost subhumans. And so no one want to even bother reading. And when we are seeing now Chinese winning, we're going, what's going on here? Who's telling us the truth and who's telling us the lies here? What is actually happening there? How can these people be winning if they're not doing something right? How can they be that bad? You know, I mean, this demonization of different cultures, whether it's Russia or China or different, every almost 5 years there's a flavor of who we're going to demonize now in the Western world, and all of them start to talk from the same microphone about who they want to decide to demonize. We need to be a bit more smart as humans and not be influenced by these bad leaders that they're taking these short-term approaches to rally the troops behind them for short-term gain, as opposed to us as a world right now. We're one planet. It takes maybe 4 missiles to destroy the whole planet, and we can't let those leaders tell us if and when they're going to start a war. It's complete garbage what's going on, and so it's a real shame. If you ask anybody if they read anything about what happens in companies in China, it would be 1 per million.
Well, also probably mainly our sinologists will do that, and people who are interesting.
Yeah.
In like my areas of, I did a bit of study on HRM in China, so I know a little bit of those. Yeah. So
it took in the last 2 weeks just so interesting, this whole thing about how quickly in the Western world the media can turn against someone or some country or something.
It's not healthy.
It's so unhealthy. It took about 3 days or even 24 hours when Macron had a meeting with
Trump.
Macron had a meeting with Trump or something, and clearly, I don't know, something happened in that meeting whereby the English not happy with it because the English want to have a very tough stance on Russia. And I'm not saying who's right and wrong. I'm just observing. It took 24 hours. Every single podcast, every single mainstream media, every single channel in the UK, you can hear the derogative accent speaking in French in a funny accent and laughing about the accent of it's total racism turned the tap like that within 24 hours. From the top down, laughing, making fun of Macron. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting. And we do that against China. We do that against so many people. Our leaders within 24 hours and those mainstream media, BBC, ABC, tell us who we need to be nice again to and who is we shouldn't be nice to, who's civilized, so to speak, who's not civilized. It's terrible. We've got to cut through that rubbish. Very
no comment. I've just talk about the area that I know. Yeah. I'm not too much into politics.
Absolutely. How do you think HR will evolve in the next 10 years? Can you think of a couple of things that you go and you think
I
they're
think
going to be so
AI
different?
definitely will play the some role. I think in the next few years we are into the AI study as well. Recently, I just completed a project with German colleagues. To looking at whether really, because a lot of medias kind of again make a comments on, using the AI will improve diversity or enhance a fair sort of personal selections, and we place a suspicious on that. So we investigated again about 18 managers, both in Australia and Germany, and we also run the experiments to find out, in fact, the decision making to purchase AI into using in the organization like recruitments or screening or performance management. Still, not quite consistent among all the HR managers who are involved in those recruitment decisions. So I think, but then AI, it's becoming very important tool for HR to use, particularly in the areas of screening, because it saves the cost and then increase efficiency.
So you're expecting AI to be a major disruption to HR?
I think so. But then also the ethics area. AI and the ethics were actually challenging the future operations of HR.
So you're concerned about that?
I'm concerned.
You know it's going to have a major effect, but you're
lots of discussion. Lots of discussion in our HR field at the moment. Yeah.
Interesting area, the example that you used about assessing people.
Yeah, assessing
just completely
people.
reliant on AI
because
to tell you.
AI, the manager actually reflecting, say, using the AI, in fact, give them a lot of freedom because people seem not being able to give it praises, give it the proper assessments of their subordinates because it's confrontational. It's kind of nervous to tell people your performers are not good, right? So if AI can actually produce very subjective data to show consistently what areas of the improvement that you need to make, it's easier for the manager. From a research area, we found it that one thing it might actually interfere personal privacy in terms of how you work and how do you do your job, etc. But also, I think it's creating more isolations between the members in the organization. So that's one area of our concern.
Okay,
so
definitely.
I think there's a lot of ethics to address.
Okay. How can HR drive creativity in the workplace?
In a lot of ways. In terms of design, particularly in terms of job design. I think nowadays, a lot more thinking about job design because if your job design is actually impeded.
Do you mean like custom job design? You're encouraging people to customize the roles for each person almost?
Yeah, like job design in terms of you have to really understand whether this person who like to work independently or work in the group. And their creativity, it's also not all about individual creativity is really important, but then organization also need to address organizational innovation, which is often come as a knowledge sharing, as a collaborations. So the job design is really important to assess whether individual preference, which type of the work. Is that more independent work or is that more teamwork? So HR definitely in that area is really important.
Yeah.
And then again, another areas of the importance is about compensation, which is that creativity being rewarded, innovations, activity being rewarded, and how do you design the reward to tie it up with that?
Okay. Work-life balance. This is something you've researched a lot about.
Yes.
I guess that's connected with the flexibility. Maybe they're two different things, maybe the same.
Remote work.
Yeah. So what's the secret to a successful work-life balance program?
Interesting. The secrets. I think there's no secret. No secrets recipes. But I think because work-life balance is very individual oriented.
Okay.
But then organization need to have the policy in place to allow that work-life balance, that to allow that employee has their autonomy. I think if you talk about secret, I think most important in the knowledge eras, employees need to have a lot of autonomy. From one of my students' project, it definitely showing that autonomy it's helping employees to have that work-life enrichment because you'll be able to manage your time easily so that you will be able to actually using even the personal resources for organizational benefits and of course organizational resources in terms of be able to get support, be able to get that time flexibility to enrich the family life as well.
Yeah.
So I think if you think about a secret, I think a lot, again, very theoretically driven as well from STD theory, like self-determination theory. You know, people are more motivated if you have a job design that meet the 3 criteria. One is autonomy, the other one is competency, and the third one is relatedness. You have to see, you know, what you do actually have a greater good. Not only just for yourself, but for company, for the greater community.
Autonomy,
competency. Competency means that you need to have a job that's challenging. Go back to the job design. You can't just give it people, you know, superficial job, going to do photocopy all day long. Need to have those kind of challenging
competency
work.
relate to being challenged?
Job design, yeah. You need to give it people a job that is challenging and have a growth opportunity, learning opportunity.
You call that competency?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so if you're not and also be able to provide a training opportunity so that people feel competent enough to do the job. You can't just say, hey, Chris going to do CEO job, Anwar's job immediately. You can't. You need a kind of training opportunity, role play, putting in some, some task to train them up, so that exposure to external engagement, so that they know what these roles entail.
Yeah. When you look at startup culture versus corporate, what do you think is the main difference that HR should do? What's the main difference from the HR strategy to cater for a culture that's a startup in a startup versus one in a corporate?
Interesting. You asked me to comment on what I had studied when I started with my PhD, which is looking at small business and small medium size business versus larger company.
Yeah.
And also, I think recently we investigated the virtual development workers, like virtual, what do you call it? Digital workers who actually work a lot in the artistic field, and they are mainly entrepreneurs. They run their own self studios, but their well-being is being affected because they tended to blur the line between leisure activities versus their professional activities. Because a lot of artists that you go to Adelaide Fringe, it's actually part of their job to engage with the networking. But those hours is actually draining their energy and causing the problems of well-being. I think the major differences between smaller or startup companies versus a bigger company is the resources constraints. You know that startup, you're not going to have comprehensive HR team to look after different areas of the HR function. One CEO or the managing director look after everything. You hire people, you train people, coaching people, mentor people, you pay people. You make a decisions on promotion instead of going through, all the criteria for selection, for example. So I think that's a major difference. Resources constraints. It's a huge constraint for the small business.
For an HR leader, what are the must-have skills?
As a HR leaders,
think of the top 3, 1, 2, any that comes to mind.
My colleagues and I have a long discussions. I think one of the area HR is really needs, it's an analytical skill.
Interesting.
I agree with that. And I don't think because HR tended to come from a social science background, so they tended to no need to do a lot of analysis, data analysis. They kind of gut feeling, and probably manager do that. It's the same.
Social science must be built based on numbers as well.
I thought so too. I think HR at the moment dealing really well with the compliance. Although my colleagues still disagree with me, think that HR still need a lot of legal knowledge in order to inform, what is what is compliance or not with the organizational activities such as. But I think in Australian context, I find it compliance is okay, but I find it analytical skill is really really useful. And they need to know how to talk to convince a line manager. That's a third skill. I think
People skills, communication skills.
Yeah, people skill, especially not just talking to employees. I think talking to the line manager is a line manager they need to influence to say, you know, this is you doing it, not HR doing it.
Yeah.
Because I tended to telling my student, you know, don't think your jobs, you know, it can be done by HR. HR just informing, advice,
because someone
partnership. Somebody need to do HR work, and that's a line manager's role. It's not HR roles.
You're right.
But HR need to have analytical roles to say, these data telling me this is a decision that you need to make, informing the CEO up, informing the line manager down, to say, my decision, my advice is actually analytically based or data based. It's data driven, not just like my gut feeling or law say so. Law says so, is that effective for my organization? Or external community expectation, everybody need to do CSR.
Yeah. Very
but
interesting.
Is that good for your organization? And then different organization, industry are very different to do. You know, corporate social responsibility is that every organization need to do that.
So in saying that, here's a follow-up question for you. What are the main 5 areas or the top 5 areas of HR? For example, you talked about compliance is one area of HR. Then maybe you can think about, how about the culture? That's another area of HR. So break it down for us, at least 3 or 5 major areas that HR need to be good at or concerned with, including those 2.
Yeah, I find those compliance communications is a top HR's role to do. Compliance definitely is important. And communication with the line managers, I personally find it that need to be strengthened, although HR currently doing really well in terms of design like training program, design compensation. At least from my experience, I can see they're doing well in that sense. But whether all those, like, for example, training or compensation, is that addressing the intersectional needs or not? You know, because not everybody love money. If you can have a better communication with a line manager and they're helping them to design better job, understand individual employees' needs, their training needs, or even their flexible work arrangement or not, I think need HR to be able to advise line manager to do it. So I think if you talk about top 5, I can only talk about top 3, compliance, communications, and also continue working on those key HR area design.
Okay. For someone who's aspiring to become an HR professional, do you have any advice for them, career advice?
Career advice or learning advice?
Either.
I think they need to, at least they need to complete the bachelor degrees of the HRM to actually understand what is the role of the HR entails.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people coming into the bachelors of HRM, they tended to think, you know, do I have to do recruitments? Tended to think in terms of very narrow. But I think, in fact, with the HR knowledge and skill, they can almost go into even line manager's role and start it with administrative to understand organizational functioning to start with. And they can go to the government sectors to work in the service, customer services, you know, have that knowledge, have that. I find it nowadays, HR students tended to think narrowly. You know, I have a bit like you think about marketing, you got to be going to HR. I believe the HR professional need to understand business first, need to understand overall business function. And I think career.
How can that happen? So you advise them to...
Yeah, the best HR manager, in fact, it's coming from the other experience.
Interesting.
This is my experience
Sure.
and observation. And I also advise students, don't limit yourself to say it's good to go into the HR field first and start it with a small job as a recruitment or as a journalist, but it's also open the door to other opportunity because through the other opportunity you can shift
You can come back.
and you have a lots of understanding about how business working, how customer services work as that role. Then you can better design the customer service role.
I agree.
So that's my sort of advice for the business student who major in HRM.
Last question. What's the biggest challenge for disability and diversity and inclusion for in the workplace? What's the biggest challenge from an HR perspective when it comes to dealing with those issues, diversity and inclusion?
The convince employer is good to include disabled people with an intellectual disability especially. Again, I have a student who work on that, and then clearly the research evidence show that if employers have the management control in place in terms of compliance, in terms of performance expectation, they can do really well and in line with the HR policy with the diversity and inclusion. And the feedback, those managers who actually got the help from HR to design that sort of program, it's been beneficial. And not only beneficial, employer had to see in a bigger picture, you're not only helping this individual person, you're helping whole community, their family. So I'm truly convinced that employer need to be, at the moment, I think lots of research is actually based on employees' perspectives on how good that I feel to be as an individual who with an intellectual disability or whatever disability, I have a dignity to work and to earn a bit of money. But I think now it's a time to actually let the employers know there are the costs. Again, short-term cost, long-term benefits, it's often always the short-term cost.
Yes.
Because you are doing something good, and that's something that beneficial for the community in long term.
If you were to give one advice to a company leader, CEO, MD, about leading by example, one thing you want them to focus on, not two, not three, one thing to practice and to put in practice, meaning lead by example, what would that be?
Listening.
Oh my God. Wow, you blew my mind away. Oh my God.
I have a great time with you because you listen to me.
Yeah.
And I listen to you, isn't it? So we have a great time. I'm hoping you're having the same feeling.
100%.
Because we enjoy the conversation because we're listening to each other. And I find the conversation is most meaningful when you're listening. And I don't think the employees should be the exception.
Yes.
We all like to be heard, like you earlier. We keep on talking about voices here.
Yes.
So I can't advise anybody.
And the same thing to the HR leader, director of HR. So. What would be that one thing you would like them to put to practice to lead by example? What would that be?
The HR, sorry, my mind kind of going off the track a little bit.
Yeah, we started with the leader, CEO,
and
now
the
HR leader. Is it the same or maybe slightly different? Maybe pick another one so it's not the same. Although I totally agree, maybe it's important for them to do the same too. But maybe pick another skill another maybe skill, maybe something to put in practice to lead by example.
For the HR leaders.
HR leader to lead by example within their own department, so their own HR people are seeing it, the people she's meeting with, the employees she's talking to, when she goes to the kitchen, etc. What is the one thing you want them to put in practice?
Goodness me, you caught me in this because I can't think of any word than listening. still listening.
Totally agree with you. Rachel
Yeah.
Clements, the HR organizational psychologist, said that as well. Said about, you have that little micro chat with them when you say, how was your weekend, etc. You got to listen to what they're telling you. You got to remember what they said. So you start to learn, get to know them about their family and what they do on the weekend and who they are as a human beings. So you get to know them. You've got to listen. Yeah.
Yeah. I find that's fundamental to any relationship building. You have to listen. I can't think of anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's a basic human skill as well.
Yeah.
I think, So I think you are so successful running this podcast. You are a great listener.
Thank you. I'm doing my best.
Yeah, that's actually being able to let people talk freely.
Very kind of you to give me this compliment.
Indeed.
I don't feel I deserve it, but thank you. I appreciate it.
You do. Yeah, you are really good at listening and then asking questions.
Thank you.
Follow
Thank
up.
you.
So
it's an honor to have you on board and for you to take the trip from Adelaide to come and talk to us. We don't take it for granted. We really appreciate it, and we hope to be able to get your name out there for people who are interested in some research that's sort of aligned with Dr. Connie's areas, to reach out and to hopefully a combination between industry and Dr. Connie's resources at the University of South Australia can create another yet interesting project before we lose you to retirement at some point. So hopefully you'll achieve a few goals still before you do that.
Oh, thank you for this opportunity to speak, and hopefully there will be the collaboration opportunity for us. Yeah.
Hopefully. It's an honor to have you on board. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.